Dominic has been missing.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, need recording permission.
Okay.
Oh, he's typing.
Okay. Okay, so that is taken care of. Now let's give you recording permission. Okay, and then let me share the screen. Okay, so I think we had gone till
So we're reading about Ajamil and his story about how, even if we make the most terrible mistake on the path of bhakti, right? How Ajamil, he really, goes through right. Just one second.
yes, Ajamil, from a brahmana to a really fallen person, like a dacoit, and then from that he becomes like a top-class Vaishnava and goes back to Godhead. So it's a story of a lot of hope, a story that you can draw a lot of lessons for our own bhakti. So let's continue reading, I think. Okay, so let's read from here. This fallen Brahmana, Ajamil, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. So this was his modus livelihood. My dear king, while he thus spent his life in abominable sinful activities to maintain his family of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. It's quite a long time doing this kind of activities. That old man Ajamil had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayan. Since Narayan was young, I think we've read all this.
Yeah.
Right? So let's go back to.
Just heard from Dominic. She's busy with her exams. Her semester is coming to an end, and so she just wrote that. That's why she's missing everyone, and she's waiting to just by next week it'll end, and so she's, just eagerly waiting to join us again.
So these Yamadutas, or the order carriers of the Lord of Death, they came to capture Ajamil, but then he called out Narayan, his son, and then immediately the Vishnudutas appeared, and they stopped the Yamadutas from taking Ajamil.
We read this also.
Right, okay. Okay, so we'll continue from here. I think text 38, Vishnudutas. The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnudutas, said, if you are actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion.
Dharma.
What is a dharma? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we can start from.
We didn't read this
Yeah.
purport. Yeah.
So the So the blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas said, if you're actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion. This inquiry by the Vishnu Dutas to the Yamadutas is most important. A servant must know the instructions of his master. The servants of Yamaraj claim to be carrying out his orders, and therefore the Vishnu Dutas very intelligently asked them to explain the symptoms of religious and irreligious principles. A Vaishnava knows these principles perfectly well because he is well acquainted with the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Supreme Lord said, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all other varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Therefore, surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the actual principle of religion. Those who have surrendered to the principles of material nature instead of to Krishna are all impious, regardless of their material position. Unaware of the principles of religion, they do not surrender to Krishna, and therefore they are considered sinful rascals, the lowest of men, and fools bereft of all knowledge. So this is a significant point here, that what is piety and what is impiety. Generally, we tend to think that if someone is executing or performing some sinful activities, then that person is impious. And if someone is engaged in pious work, then they are religious, or they are, but actually the definition of piety and impiety actually hinges on something even more fundamental and even more basic. So impiety means anything that stands in the way of our relationship with the Supreme Person. And piety is anything that connects us back to the Supreme Person. So in that sense, even materially motivated religion, even though it may seem like that is pious, and we are following the codes of morality and we are trying to acquire good karma and do good things, but if it is done without the desire to connect or reconnect and do it as an offering of love, then that actually is also impious. Right? That's what Prabhupada is saying here, right? That those who are surrendered to the principles of material nature instead of to Krishna are all impious.
Like it's just being in the mode of goodness and nice to others or kind to others is a good stepping stone, but it is not complete religion. I think through this we'll understand the different layers or different steps in being religious and spiritual.
We can skip this, right?
Yeah.
Let's continue.
What is the process of punishing others? Who are the actual candidates for punishment? Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable, or only some of them? Because the question there is that if the Yamadutas, they came to punish Ajamil, so if you are carrying the authority to punish, then you should also know who to punish and who to not, because otherwise you may be misusing your authority. So the Yamadutas then reply, let me read this sloka. Veda pranihito dharmo hi adharmastad viparyaya vedo narayana sakshat swayam bhur iti shushuma. The Yamadutas replied, that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraj. I think we also did this.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
So again, to summarize, the Yamadutas are giving a good definition of dharma, that whatever is given in the Vedas is dharma, and because the Vedas, they are
No, I don't think we have done this. I don't think
okay.
so. Yeah.
Because the Vedas are directly coming from the mouth of Narayan, and so they are non-different from him. And they are saying that this is not just our opinion, we have heard it from Yamaraj, who is also one of the 12 Mahajans, the 12 great authorities on spiritual life.
Actually, just right now we were listening to a lecture, and one of the greatest challenges in modern times is this sense that we can somehow create our own definition of dharma
or reality,
and sort of this deconstructing any kind of objective reality and sort of entering into a plane where we think that I can pick and choose, right? So one of the pitfalls of that, apart from, there are so many others, one is of course that dharma cannot be concocted by anybody's mind. Just like I cannot go to any country and say, okay, I'm going to create the laws of the state. There are some natural laws, I mean, governmental laws that are operating within that state. So it's the same way. There are some natural laws of nature that are operating.
And we also cannot create those natural laws.
We cannot create those laws, but we may think I can, or I can challenge those laws. But there's also another risk to that, which is that it is called ardha kukuta nyaya, which means that I can, if once I start doing this picking and choosing business, then there is a story of this man who had a hen who used to lay a golden egg. And so he would say that, all right, since, you know, the first half of the egg requires me to feed the hen, and the second half of the egg actually lays the egg, the golden egg. So I'm going to actually cut this hen in two parts, right? So, because so that I can only get the golden egg. So now obviously we know that's not possible. So when we try to just pick up things that feel convenient to us, or which seem to agree with our conception of reality, then we enter into this sort of dangerous whirlpool, right, where we don't know what is dharma and what is adharma. And so here, that's why, how do we understand dharma? Because it's a very, very tricky thing to understand. It's not black and white. It is not as cut and dried. So that's why the word Mahajan is actually being introduced here, which is a new concept, I think, for, you know, even though we've talked about this, but specifically the word Mahajan, which means people who are actually walking on this path, and who are they have lived a life of dharma, and they have lived a life of bhakti to Krishna. And so it is within their heart, actually. It is by following in their footsteps, and it's by understanding their heart, that one can actually truly understand the intricacies of dharma. It's not even possible to understand dharma simply by reading the Shastra,
the
Vedas.
So let's read the purport. The servants of Yamaraj. Delia, would you like to read the purport?
Yes, Prabhuji. The servants of Yamaraj replied quite properly. They did not manufacture principles of religion or irreligion. Instead, they explained what they had heard from the authority Yamaraj. I need to learn Sanskrit.
Mahajano yena gatah sapantha.
One should follow the Mahajana, the authorized person. Yamaraj is one of 12 authorities. Therefore, the servants of Yamaraj, the Yamadutas, replied with perfect clarity when they said, Susruma, we have heard. The members of modern civilization manufacture defective religious principles through speculative concoction. This is not dharma. They do not know what is dharma and what is adharma. Therefore, as stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam,
Dharma projito ketavo atra.
Dharma, not supported by the Vedas, is rejected from Srimad Bhagavata Dharma. Bhagavata Dharma comprises only that which is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavata Dharma is Sarva Dharman. Oh,
yes.
Go ahead.
You're doing good.
Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mam Ekam Saranam Vraja.
Very good.
Perfect.
Excellent. Yeah.
One must accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender to him in whatever he says. That is dharma. Arjuna, for example, thinking that violence was a dharma, was declining to fight, but Krishna urged him to fight. Arjuna abided by the orders of Krishna, and therefore he is actually a dharmi because the order of Krishna is dharma. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the real purpose of Veda knowledge is to know me. One who knows Krishna perfectly is liberated. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita,
Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tatvatah tatta deham punar janma neti mameti. So Arjuna.
one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. One who understands Krishna and abides by his order is a candidate for returning home, back to Godhead. It may be concluded that dharma, religion, refers to that which is ordered in the Vedas, and adharma, irreligion, refers to that which is not supported in the Vedas.
Yeah. Just read this next paragraph. Dharma is not actually manufactured by Narayan. As stated in the Vedas, The injunctions of dharma emanate from the breathing of Narayan, supreme living entity. Narayan exists eternally and breathes eternally, and therefore dharma, the injunctions of Narayan, also exist eternally. Srila Madhvacharya, the original Acharya for those who belong to the Madhava Gauriya Sampradaya, says, the transcendental words of the Vedas emanated from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Vedic principles should be understood to be Vaishnava principles because Vishnu is the origin of the Vedas. The Vedas contain nothing but besides the instructions of Vishnu, and one who follows the Vedic principle is a Vaishnava. The Vaishnava is not a member of a manufactured community of this material world. A Vaishnava is a real knower of the Vedas as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. That's a good point, right? That a Vaishnava is not just a sectarian designation, but anyone who knows the real purport or the real conclusion of the Vedas is actually a Vaishnava. And that is actually real dharma, not something that we can come out and we can create based on our own conveniences or based on our own understanding. At the same time, the great devotees, the great acharyas who come in the line, they're able to take these eternal principles and apply them according to time, place, and circumstances, right? And Prabhupada says that is actually realization. That means that one is not simply, because not everything that is stated in the Vedas can be applied as it is. So there are some adjustments that are also made, but that is made by not changing the eternal principles, but rather just adjusting them to suit the particular situation. And that can only be done by an expert teacher. So maybe
we'll take some reflections or thoughts so far.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So how do we resolve a contradiction if both are stating, like, if we follow one direction of Vedas, then we are not following the second one. And if we are following the second one, we are not following the first one. If we are in that situation, how do we resolve that situations?
That's a very good question. And I guess, therefore, one should not follow the Vedas based on just one's own mental preferences. And the Vedas or the scriptures, we need to study them under the guidance of a bona fide teacher. Because the teacher, with the Vedas, they are like a dictionary or like a big encyclopedia. So there are different instructions for different people. It's not like same instructions for everybody. Just like if you take a medicine book, right? There's so many medicines given. So it doesn't mean that everybody has to take all the medicines or the same medicines apply or the same procedures apply for every single person. And now the doctor, expert doctor, knows for which person what procedure or medicine is appropriate. Similarly, Vedas are like that. But the knowledge is valid, but that particular knowledge may not be valid for me at this particular time. So time, place, and circumstance. And for that, we cannot use our own mind to decide, I'm going to follow this, I'm not going to follow that. Then it can become very dangerous. And therefore, one has to work under the guidance of a bona fide teacher or acharya. So that way, we know what is beneficial and what is not.
it's true, because even when I was studying Ayurveda, there are these ancient classical texts, the Charak Samhitas, from which all of the knowledge of Ayurveda comes from. But, one look at that book and it's overwhelming because there's just like, they're talking about stuff that we don't even know about. Like, it's like different kinds of medicines, different things. And it's, and so then I was thinking that it's the same thing, that so much of what is being talked about may not be applicable for us, in the modern times. We live different lives. And so that's why this process of knowledge is not simply a process of just picking up a book and just being able to figure it out on our own. Just like one cannot become an expert surgeon simply by picking up a book on surgery. One actually has to train under an expert surgeon who can teach us the intricacies of what, how to do it. So same thing with bhakti. It's a very practical process. And so one requires the constant guidance and constant training that can actually help us understand. And that training actually never stops. So many years later, even though we have studied these books and we have read these books so many times, but even for ourselves, when we are trying to understand something, we always need the guidance of other seniors who can guide us.
Because this knowledge is fluid in that sense, because our life situation is fluid. And we need to correct and adjust under the guidance. Dalia, you had a question.
I have one example, Prabhuji, Mataji. In Vedas, it said Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, right? And then when you see the example of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlada, Prahlada went against his father And similarly in Vamana Avatara, if you see, Raja Bali went against his own teacher. Like, those are the two instances wherein, you don't have to follow those injunctions per se. Like, so even though it is said in Vedas, they, when it comes to God, he's beyond all that. I don't know if this example fits in.
No, that's true. And you made some good point, because both of them are Mahajans. Prahlad Maharaj is also a Mahajan, and Bali Maharaj is also a Mahajan. So there you go, right?
Yeah, and then Prahlad Maharaj, he acted under the direction of Narad Muni, because Narad Muni was his spiritual master. So he followed his directions. And Bali Maharaj, he accepted, when he understood that Vamana is the Supreme Lord, so he accepted him as the Supreme Guru. And based on his instruction and the conversation that happens, Bali actually then forego his original, his guru, Shukracharya. Yeah.
Okay, Delia, go ahead.
I was talking to Achyuta Baba once about the Gita class, and I said it doesn't feel like I'm learning all of these things so much as remembering them. And he said, of course, because it's truth, and truth, like it's eternal, and that's how it's going to feel. And I started thinking about this, the truth or the knowledge as something that exists kind of independently, and that kind of like finds a home inside certain people. So you become kind of like the holder of that knowledge, but they're not your thoughts and they're not your ideas. It's just, like this thing that exists independently of you, resides in your head and your mind and your person and your spirit and your body. And then you transmit it to other people, and they become holders of that knowledge as well. So I just, and I think also that's how this knowledge can be preserved for so many thousands and thousands of years, because it's a truth that resides within us, not something that somebody has thought up.
Very nice. That is very nice. And that's exactly right. Our spiritual teacher, His Holiness Mukunda Goswami, always says that more important than the content of what a devotee speaks, it's the vibration. It's their vibration that is actually infectious. And it carries with it a certain influence or a certain impact. So it's the same knowledge that is being spoken by so many devotees. And yet some devotees, because of their own realization, they carry greater potency, and it can create a deeper imprint within our heart. And yesterday we were just reading in Srimad Bhagavatam about how Krishna actually appears in the womb of Devaki. And it is an imprint. It is a transference from the mind of Vasudev to the mind of Devaki. And that is a process of initiation.
Yeah, from the heart of
Vasudev to the heart of Devaki. So it is very powerful. That's why, this association of devotees and hearing and reading from Prabhupada's purports, they're very, very powerful.
And even we may not understand everything, like many times Prabhupada, when he was in India, he would give lectures in Hindi. And many of his Western disciples, they could not understand even a word. But Prabhupada said, he asked all of his disciples to sit there and listen to him. And then when they asked that, Prabhupada, you don't understand anything, he said, it doesn't matter, this is transcendental vibration. And basically your soul will understand it. Even though it's beyond, this vibration is beyond the language. It has this purifying effect. So it's a transmission of faith, transmission of the person's own realization and love that happens in an imperceptible manner. And the knowledge and understanding, that is just one part of it.
Anybody else? We can continue. Otherwise, let's read a little bit more. We'll come back and take more. Otherwise, yeah. Text 41. The supreme cause of all causes, Narayan, is situated in his own abode in the spiritual world, but nevertheless he controls the entire cosmic manifestation according to the three modes of material nature, Sattva-gun, Rajogun, and Tamogun. In this way, all living entities are awarded different qualities, different names, such as Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, different duties according to the Varnashram institution in different forms. Thus, Narayan is the cause of the entire cosmic manifestation. Let's continue. Yeah. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land and supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entity.
So this is being spoken by the Yamadutas. So first they established that Narayan, the Vedas are, you should follow the Vedas because the Vedas come from Narayan. And then they established the position of Narayan, right? So they are going in a very logical way. Then they establish the position of Narayan, who Narayan is, because everything comes from him. Therefore, whatever is coming from his mouth should be accepted. And then they speak this verse to say that the activities of Ajamil, they have been watched by all these different witnesses. So they list all the witnesses who watch the activities of a living entity, whatever good or bad they do. So therefore, we have plenty of evidence. Like in the court of law, you need evidence and witnesses to prove somebody's crime. So they're saying that we have plenty of witnesses who can verify what this guy Ajamil did. So therefore, we are not just here to punish him for no reason. We actually know what we are doing. So they're trying to defend themselves.
The candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses to have deviated from their prescribed regulative duties. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. O inhabitants of Vaikuntha, you are sinless, but those within this material world are all karmis, whether acting piously or impiously. So this is such an interesting point, right? Both kinds of action are possible for them because they are contaminated by the three modes of nature and must act accordingly. One who has accepted a material body cannot be inactive, and sinful action is inevitable for one acting under the modes of material nature. Therefore, all the living entities within this material world are punishable. Heavy, huh? It's very heavy.
So let's maybe
we
see if
should-
we are.
Yeah, there's no photo.
So does everybody understand what's being said here?
So should we?
But if everybody in the material world is punishable, so there must be somewhere where there'll be some redemption where we can.
Yeah, so if people are just living just a regular material life, and what this verse is saying, that they are just living under the force of the three modes of nature, and then everybody will commit some sinful activities, somebody less, somebody more, but you're bound to commit sinful activities when you're just acting under the modes of nature, because the mode of passion and ignorance, they lead us to doing things which are against the dharma. So if you just leave yourself to the forces of nature, then you will end up, and therefore everybody is punishable.
Well, it's also the fact, right, that we talked about this in such great detail about the laws of karma. And so the laws of karma, if you remember, there was a verse in the Bhagavad Gita which said that if whatever action we perform has a reaction. And so the only action which does not have a reaction is a karma or work that is done as an act of sacrifice. Other than that, whatever we may do, and whether it's pious or impious, they're all subject to punishment. And so this is something to think about, because many times we just think that, oh, as long as I'm just a good moral person, I go to the church or the temple once a week, twice a week, I do my stuff, right? And I can just go about my own business. There's a story of Prabhupada where he met this one person who's the manufacturer of glass company. And Prabhupada said, you're taking all the sand and you're making this, you're making this glass, right? And you're selling it and you're making this huge profit. So, you're stealing, right? So he said, oh, no, Swamiji, I also give a part of it to God. So it's all right. So you're a small thief, right? The other thing that Prabhupada also says, which I found very, very striking, was that any kind of discussion of morality in this material world is essentially a group of thieves who have stolen something, and then they sit together and they say, now let's divide this boot, in a just manner or in a fair manner. Right. So the very foundation of our action is rooted in this sort of taking something without acknowledging where it's coming from. And of course, as human beings, we also have this tendency to take much more than what we require. And the Ishopanishad speaks about that one should only accept that much which is due to one or set aside as one's quota.
Delia, go ahead.
I remember you guys saying that even the mode of goodness binds somebody to karma, and I think this emphasizes that there's no amount of positive actions or karma that can get you out of your condition. And then I was thinking once about, like, let's say that even positive karma keeps you within the wheel of karma. And I was thinking, like, let's say that because you're a really hard worker or something, you earn a $20 gift certificate to Walmart or something because you did so good. So you have some, like, a positive credit in your favor. But then when you actually go into Walmart, maybe you end up buying other things. So you don't just like, you don't end up at zero. Like, while you're there, you end up like spending much more than you have, and like kind of getting into debt again.
Such a good point.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's endless. The cycle is endless.
When we talk of right and wrong, somebody said this that really stuck with me. There is no right way of doing something wrong.
Nice. Yeah, it's true, and sometimes it's almost scary. And I think Krishna speaks about this endless tree. And, I was just thinking about that myself one day. I was like, yeah, it starts with two people, right? It starts with one person with small little desire. And then you get together with another person and you start this, like, it's like almost like you start this whole tree, and the tree is endless. It just goes on and on and on and on, and the complexities of that tree and the responsibilities and the kind of activity. And that's what happened with Ajamil. Just started with one tiny desire, and of course, in those times, you would say that was not right, but in today's times, you would say, hey, that was harmless. He was just attracted, it was just simple attraction. He kind of fell for this woman who happened to be a prostitute. So, all right, but then they got married. He gave up his wife. Fine. He did not take care of his parents. All that is just the way we live in current times, right? So it's all right. I mean, and so, yeah, he's having children, and now he's 80 years old, and he just had another son. So everything is like, if you think about it, it just feels like, okay, just a guy leading sort of his regular life. Isn't it?
I mean, he did a little bit more than that.
He did a little bit more than that.
He was a dacoit and thief.
Yeah, he was. So in the course of doing all that, right, he was engaging in activities to maintain his family, which were nefarious and which were unethical, right? So all I'm saying is that ultimately, if you look at it from his perspective, he was just trying to maintain himself, right? And this was how he thought he could maintain, because it was a very demanding existence. His children, he had so many children, and they were wanting so many things. So he was engaging in nefarious activities, but it was causing him to, leading him on to this kind of path of just sinful activities and entanglement. And right?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Go
No,
ahead.
I when I think about this, I even think about when it comes to perception, and I think about what we were talking about when we got to the end of the Bhagavad Gita, when we're talking about our lives not being our own, and our body not being our own, and even our lifespan not being our own, and what that truly meant to realize that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true, and the reason why, I guess I wanted to bring this out, even though I know that Ajamil had a much crazy life, but it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. So, we can judge Ajamil, but, for us too.
Yeah. Parts of what he did, we also do.
I mean, we're working for corporations and companies who might be engaged in unethical stuff all the time, and maybe you're building a software that is assisting some violence somewhere. The point is that one way or the other, we are all engaged in a sort of a similar, a very innocent desire, fulfillment of just a very simple, innocent desire. And we think, hey, I'm allowed that much, right? So we'll continue.
In proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious activities in this life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of his karma in the next. So you'll see how the Yamadutas are. They're presenting perfect logical arguments. They're building up their case one step at a time. So they're saying these are all the truths. So how can you refute all these truths? They're telling Vishnu Dutas.
or best of the demigods, we can see three different varieties of life, which are due to the contamination of the three modes of nature. The living entities are thus known as peaceful, restless, and foolish, as happy, unhappy, or in between, or as religious, irreligious, and semi-religious. We can deduce that in the next life, these three kinds of material nature will similarly act.
So you can see how in the Bhagavatam, like what we study in the Bhagavad Gita, is manifested live with examples of actual people in Bhagavatam. So how they go hand in hand together. This knowledge that we learn in the Bhagavad Gita is coming live now.
Let's read this purport, huh? Should we?
I think this is kind of same thing.
Okay. Okay, so let's continue.
Just as springtime in the present indicates the nature of springtimes in the past and future, so this life of happiness, distress, or a mixture of both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives.
Sometimes, we have this desire that I wish I could know what I was doing in my past life. And this is a verse that is indicative. And there's another verse that says that how just like if you have some breeze that is blowing, just by smelling the fragrance that is being carried by the breeze, one can tell what it has gone over. So it has either gone through some rose garden, so then it will carry the fragrance of roses. But if it has gone through some garbage dump, then it will carry the stench. So same way, by seeing our present state of consciousness, one can have a good indication of where we were in our last life and where we are going to be in our next life as well. It's not a mystery.
It's not a mystery. The omnipotent Yamaraj is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of a living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives. So this is describing how Krishna has given Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, the kind of omniscience that he has. So that's how Yamaraj is able to know what's going on in our heart and what we have done in the past and what we might end up doing in the future. So yeah, in that sense, Yamaraj is as good as Brahma. Or
I'm interested in reading this purport. Can you just do that?
Okay.
That's some interesting. One should not consider Yamaraj an ordinary living being. He's as good as Lord Brahma. He has the complete cooperation of the Supreme Lord who is situated in everyone's heart, and therefore by the grace of the Super Soul, he can see the past, present, and future of a living being from within. The word Anu Mimamshate means that he can decide in consultation with the Super Soul. Anu means following. The actual decisions concerning the next life of the living entities are made by the Super Soul, and they are carried out by Yamaraj. So there is some
cooperation.
As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with his present body, which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, and is unable to know his past or future lives.
So again, this is like the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. You can see that how the difference between the body and the soul, and depending on what we've done, will get a suitable body. So it's not random that a person gets a particular type of body. It's all decided by the Super Soul, who is all-knowing. So he can never be unfair, because sometimes when people are born with some, let's say, bodily deformities or some disease or something, or somebody is born in a very rich family, it's not just a random happening that is happening, but it is ultimately decided by the Super Soul. So it's all fair and in accordance with our own actions.
This is, I think, Delia, you'll find this very interesting. A human being must be educated to understand his past life and how he can endeavor for a better life in the future. There is even a book called Bhrigu Samhita, which reveals information about one's past, present, and future lives according to astrological calculations. Somehow or other, one must be enlightened about his past, present, and future. This is actually an interesting book that even now in India, like sometimes people go and they try to find out. There's an interesting history, which maybe at a later point we can tell the story.
Of the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of the senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. However, the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who in cooperation with other 16 enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations, namely happy, distressful, and mixed. So they're just laying out the foundation, how things work in this material world.
Yeah, I think this is a very beautiful verse from Sikshastakam. Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patita Mam Vishame Bhavam Budho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Dhuli Sadrishyam Vichintaya. O Krishna, beloved son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of nescience, and although I am struggling very hard, there is no way I can save myself. If you kindly pick me up and fix me as one of the particles of dust at your lotus feet, that will save me. And this is a bhajan that Prabhupada really loved, one of his favorite bhajans, Anadi Karma Phale.
Badi bhavar nava jale, tari bare na dekhi upai.
My dear Lord, I cannot remember when I somehow or other fell into this ocean of nescience, and now I can find no way to rescue myself. We should remember that everyone is responsible for his own life. If an individual becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, he is then delivered from the ocean of nescience. I think this, we should read them.
Just at least the translation.
The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 objects of sense gratification, and the mind. The subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation, and when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsmriti, or transmigration in material life. So this is the unfortunate condition of our existence, that we are trying so hard to make it work, but we are continuously struggling. And this struggle is, aptly captured in this phrase of struggle for existence, right? This continuous struggle for existence, which finally ends in total failure, because no one is able to exist in spite of trying so hard. So this struggle is so, it's an imposition. It's a burden for the living entity, because the living entity by its very nature is not meant to actually struggle in this foreign nature. And yet it is helplessly being tossed around. And yet all of this is simply a dream, because the living entity actually has nothing to do with any of this. And so we keep imagining ourselves, that we are, born in a certain country, born in a certain family. I belong to this person. I am this person. This is who I am. And all these identities that we impose upon ourselves, and then we struggle with each one of them. And the reality is that it is described that it is just like people coming into a motel or an inn, and we stay together for some time, and then we just go about our different ways. There is no, we think we have created a home, we have created a family here, but it's simply a temporary state of just camping out, right? We just set up some tents and camp situation, and we are thinking we have created something of lasting value. So we'll just, the sum and substance of material conditional life is explained in this verse. The living entity, the 17th element, is struggling alone life after life. This struggle is called samsmriti. Yes, Delia, go ahead.
I have 2 reflections.
Yeah.
One about how we don't know what our past karma and our past lives and our future lives are. I imagine, like an analogy, somebody who drinks a lot, to the point where when they're very drunk, they do something like they crash a car or something and destroy private property. And then the next day, the police, they come and get them, but the person, maybe they blacked out, they have no memory of it. And so they say, I don't know what I did. I have no recollection, but does that mean that they're not going to be held responsible for their actions? Of course they are, even if they don't remember it. That's one. And then I just forgot my second.
Such a good reflection, such a good insight. Forgetfulness is not an excuse, nor is ignorance. Right? Both are not an excuse. So the laws are so stringent. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, say I don't get along with somebody, Mataji. Is it possible that the past enmity is carried over, and I should treat that person with more love and give that benefit of doubt? Maybe it's something from the past that is making that person act in such a way.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what there is. It could be something from the past. It could be also Krishna using that person to instruct us, especially if we are practicing devotees. Then Krishna can use different people to bring out our anarthas or our thorns in our own heart and bring it out. So it could be so many different things.
And ultimately, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, and also Prahlad Maharaj, he says there's actually only one enemy, and that is our uncontrolled mind. So we tend to think of others as being the cause of our miseries and our difficulties, but actually it is, there's actually another a very nice quote by one of our teachers, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, when faults in others delude you, he says, pause and introspect. He says, no one can harm you if you don't harm yourself. So, this sense of feeling that there are others out there whose behavior deludes us and it confuses and it's hurtful, then during those moments, we should just introspect and know that there is something within us that is being brought out to the surface, and know that ultimately, no one can really harm us.
And also he says that how faults in others, they're actually, when we see fault in others, it's actually our own faults that we see in others. So although we may not accept them or recognize them, but maybe it's obvious or maybe it's hidden, but it is something within us that we are seeing in others. And I see that all the time in regards to myself. When I see fault in others, if I'm able to reflect on it deeply, and then I see that this is a fault in myself.
Ultimately, I think that it doesn't matter where our karma comes from, and we shouldn't be preoccupied with trying to figure it out, either our good karma or our bad karma, because that might lead us into the trap of feeling like we're justified in what we do or not. At the end of the day, whatever karma we're experiencing as a result of our past actions, that's already a done deal. That's like the environment that we're facing now. But where we still have our freedom to act and to decide is how we respond to that karma, and if we keep making the same choices or different ones.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's all we could do, and that is actually what we learn through the process of bhakti, is how to develop deeper gratitude and how to live a life of gratitude. Bhakti is essentially living a life of radical gratitude, and seeing, like you see the lives of all these great devotees, how even in the midst of such difficult situations, I mean, think about, like, when I think of Jesus Christ, I mean, I just, like, what kind of compassion and gratitude would that feel like or look like, where you're on the cross and you're praying and you're saying that please forgive them, and same thing, that same mood is exemplified by so many wonderful devotees, and, who are, like Prahlad Maharaj. He's going through, his father is trying to kill him, but he's just continuously is absorbed in chanting the holy names of Krishna. And in fact, when finally Nrsingadeva asked him, what do you want? He says, please deliver my father. So it's a whole other level of consciousness. But the amazing thing is that we are also, that level of consciousness is also us. That is who we are. That level of love and compassion is our nature. But we have forgotten that nature.
So love to hear from Anshul, Anchita, Amrita, or anybody else.
Tarunji,
or anybody.
Anybody, Eric.
Hare Krishna. It really makes me think about how we're on this path and staying humble, like not really getting to a point where you're like, I know it all, or I'm I've reached a state and I'm above everyone, but remaining humble. And especially when you talk about Jesus and Haridasa Thakur, really remaining humble and remaining focused on that path, and like you said, reaching back into our original state, which is that humble state, and not feeling like you're perfected above anyone else or any tradition or any teaching or any culture, any individual or group of people.
So
Very
nice.
nice, very nice.
It's true, that humility it comes as a result of chanting, and that is something that I know all of you are chanting, and just that's where it all, we can find that connection that we are looking for, that realization that we are looking for. It all happens because of contacting Krishna in his sound. And so the more we can receive Krishna in the holy name and just, take that time to really go deeper into that relationship with Krishna as he appears, because it's otherwise the incarnations of Krishna come once in a day of Brahma, but it is described that the name is so merciful that it appears every morning. Every morning it just appears. It's very merciful.
So it appears at our call. We can call out to him and he will appear. So it's like incarnation on demand.
Anshul, Anchita, go ahead. Can't hear your voice.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we were listening and we were thinking there is not much we can do about what we did in the past. We are here, so we did some miserable thing. That's why we are here. I'm not sure how much we can change our future. So what we can do now? I mean, simply we can do just chanting, be in the association of the devotees, do the service, and I think I don't know what more we can do. What as of now, like on a practical note, I don't. That's what we were discussing. Secondly, there's always a confusion when we hear, okay, when someone do something, we should think, okay, they may have done some because Krishna is using them to basically send us a message or make us learn something, or we have some past arrangements with that person because of which he's basically giving us back or something like that. But I think it's a circle that to be thinking those things, you should be at a place mentally, emotionally, spiritually that you can actually forgive that. Yeah. And if you start forgiving because we have learned we should forgive, it actually haunt us more and basically trouble us more that, okay, internally we are not doing that, but because we have learned to do that, let's try it. And I tried it a few times, but it didn't work well. So I think first thing needs to be the water needs to be settled down first. The muddy water needs to be settled down first so that we can clear our reflection correctly. I think that's what we understood.
I really, really appreciate the point that you've made, that, real forgiveness and these real, we talk about compassion and forgiveness and humility and all these good emotions, they have to come from a real place, a genuine place of feeling full. Because if you're not feeling full, then like you're saying, it's very artificial and it doesn't last. And in fact, it can even backfire, because I forgive once, I've forgiven twice, the third time it's a volcano that just erupted because I forgave you once too much, so that's why the only answer, and Krishna speaks about that in the Bhagavad Gita, that this material nature is impossible to overcome. And when we come into spiritual life, we have a very strong tendency to think that I can figure this out and I can conquer all of this, just like I have tried to conquer material nature. But so there is that confidence. But when we understand that the way we can actually enter into this mood of humility and tolerance and forgiveness is by contacting Krishna. We have to learn the art of contacting Krishna in the holy name. And then, we feel full. And what happens when you're feeling really full? Then it doesn't matter. Somebody cuts you off. When you're really happy and you're really full, it's like, yeah, that's okay, But when you're not feeling full, then even the smallest thing, like right now with the pandemic, we are so short-circuited right now because, we are already under so much stress. So we have to find that place of connection.
And I guess also developing that true humility.
Mataji?
Yes.
But how to connect all these things?
I will talk about that. Maybe we should talk more about that. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that how
to connect all these things with
Yes.
our body.
Good question.
yeah, how to connect all these things is again, as we were discussing, it happens through chanting. Our connection to Krishna happens through chanting. We can learn a lot and we can study a lot, but ultimately it all boils down to how we receive Krishna during our chanting. We have to learn to receive Krishna. He's already there. He's already interested in us. He's already extended his hand towards us. He's always extending his hand every single day, every single moment. And he's not going to go away. It's us who are kind of holding him out, holding him back. So that is something that we have to work on continuously, that opening our heart and receiving him in the holy name. When we are calling out, it's not Krishna's names we are calling. We are actually being in presence of Krishna and learning to appreciate that presence of Krishna. Just like when a guest comes to your house or a loved one comes, then how attentive we become to him or her, right? So similarly, opening our heart, opening our attention and receiving Krishna with open heart as much as we can. Initially it will be hard, but it is something that we can do. And that's where everything will manifest from.
Yeah, just
But we forget time and again.
we
But
forget.
we forget.
Yes, yes, and that is the nature. We have to, one time Prabhupada, somebody told Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, sometimes I fall down from Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said, well, you're always fallen. Sometimes we rise to Krishna consciousness, right? So our default mode is that we forget. So that is to be expected, that in the conditioned state means state of forgetfulness. So now, when we come in the association, that's why the satsang, and when we are coming together and hearing from each other, hearing from scriptures, and then when we go back the next day, then we remember a little bit, oh yeah, Krishna is right here. Let me give him some attention. That's all I have to do. That's all. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to prove that I am a great devotee. I don't have to prove that I am somebody big, or I don't have to do anything big. I just have to do something so simple that when I'm chanting, all I have to do is just become aware that Krishna is there and give him that attention. Attention is the beginning of prema. So simply by giving this attention, we are actually beginning to develop our relationship. And that's actually the source. That's where all the good things will come from. All the good qualities we want to develop, all the good, all the auspicious things we want to develop in ourselves will happen as a result of contacting Krishna.
And recognizing our helpless situation, I guess that's another problem that at least I have, is thinking that I am okay. I am good. I have everything figured out, and whatever is left, I'll figure it out. And I'm okay. And I see that hardness in my heart, that Krishna, I don't have interest in you because I think I'm good. And that wretched condition of our heart is what is stopping us to call out to Krishna or pay attention to him. Right? We pay attention to things that are important to us, and things that are not important to us, we don't pay attention. So that's the nature of this mind is. So I guess once we recognize that how difficult situation we are in, then maybe we'll start turning more towards Krishna. And
yeah, I was just thinking that, countless lifetimes, right, we've gone through trying to find some happiness and some love. And that's our deepest need, is actually this desire for love. We don't really care about looking beautiful. We don't really care about being the smartest person. I mean, all of that is simply because we believe that by being beautiful or being smart, somebody will love me. The desire ultimately at the end of the day is that we want to love and to be loved. And so when we appreciate and start understanding that actually that desire for love can only be satisfied in our relationship with Krishna. And Krishna has already initiated that relationship. He is the one who is already initiating it. He wants us. He's already said that, you are mine. And we have this need to say that you are mine. I am yours, you are mine. That need is so deep. But in reality, the only place where we can say that in a truthful way is with Krishna. Krishna is the only thing that belongs to us, and we actually only belong to Krishna. So when we bring that mood into our chanting, then what happens is that whatever else anybody does or doesn't do, he talked to me nicely, he didn't talk to me nicely, he neglected me, all of that will become so immaterial, you know? So we have to first fill up our hearts. You know, we have to fill up
absorb Krishna in the holy name every day when we are chanting. Absorb him like anything else, like a dry sponge.
Yeah, and that is something that we were just talking about that just today, that when Lokadaksha had his fall and he fell from the attic and we were in the hospital, and he had to go for, this was the kidney surgery after that. Yeah. And I was in the hospital alone, like for 6 hours, he was in the surgery. I remember, just really, really feeling that, Krishna, I need you more than I need oxygen. That is our real need, more than we think we need so many other things, but we truly need Krishna. So to first recognize that need, and then to acknowledge the fact that he's there, and how can I develop that relationship. Anyways, that's how we can be grateful, and that's how we can be forgiving and humble. All this negativity that we are carrying in our heart, all this pain, all this grief that we are carrying because people have abused us and treated us badly and neglected us, ultimately it is just a very pale reflection of our original disconnect from Krishna.
And it's actually how badly we have treated Krishna ourselves, how we have neglected him, how we have abused him. Nobody has abused us, actually. We are the person who has abused. And we try to hide our abuse by pointing out to some other people that, hey, that person is abusing me or has abused me. Of course, that's not condoning whatever wrongful actions people do, but in a higher sense, we have done that to Krishna. And that's the thing we have to repair. That's the thing that to focus on, our relationship with Krishna.
I think Bhakti Lata also had a question, which I think it's on similar lines, Bhakti Lata, that it is when we take that time to repair this relationship, then all other relationships will automatically start to become healed.
And it's not that Krishna is holding a grudge. That it's the easiest relationship to repair, because he's one person who never holds a grudge, and he's always loving us. So his love is guaranteed. We just have to kind of take the steps and then just move forward.
I don't know, maybe we've spoken a lot, but maybe we can hear from you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yes.
So this is so wonderful. I have something that I wanted to share, because since we've been doing these studies and doing the chanting, I really began to experience something very unique in exactly what you're talking about, where it was one of the classes we had where we were discussing this, and I just started when I was meditating, after chanting, when I started meditating, I started asking Krishna to show me what my heart looks like, to show me what it looks like, or like open it up. And one day I was sitting on a couch and I just said it, like, show me. And literally out of nowhere, like, I started like he showed me this memory and something that happened where we had to get rid of our pets. It wasn't too long ago, and so many things were happening at that time, and it was like something I had to do, like, we had to do automatically. So I didn't get a chance to grieve. I didn't get a chance to do anything. And then, like, when we got back here, it was just like everything went back to normal. So it was like I didn't have any chance or time to really express the grief that I felt, and what it made me feel like to remove them from the home, because they felt like they were like members of the family at that point. And I seen an image of them, and immediately, like, I just started bursting into tears. Like, it was uncontrollable. It was just to the point where it hurt so bad that I didn't even realize that that's how I felt about it. But I knew I felt like that, but it was just like I wasn't connected to those feelings, because it just went into those deep chambers of my heart. And when I said that, like, show me, I felt like a pulsation in my heart. And then next thing you know, that image popped up, all of that happened. And then it was like really overwhelming. After I experienced that, I started to do this every single, like, it was like every other day, because I couldn't take it every day, but every other day since then, I've been asking that, and things have been he's been just bursting open. And it got to the point where it felt like I was feeling like spaces in my heart, like where I could feel whatever was there was gone. And then I actually forgot about chanting going through this, because I sat there and I thought, like, what am I gonna, and I was talking to Christian and I said, what am I gonna do now with this like hole in my heart? I just feel like my heart is just like just in the shreds, and it's how can I even go on with this big hole? And I forgot about the chanting. So that just answered my question, like when experiencing that, that's the next step, like what we had to fill it back up. And I was just wondering, and I was doing all types of stuff. I was trying to do affirmations and just going here and there, and I just forgot to chant. I just forgot that was the thing I was supposed to replace it with.
So beautiful, so beautiful. That is so amazing. And yes, that is what we want to fill our heart, because that is what the heart is really looking for. You know, all the separations and grief that we feel when our loved ones go away, it's just, you know, it's just a little indication of what real love with Krishna feels like.
And also the grief, it's an indication of the grief that Krishna feels for us going away from him.
And the continuous grief that we must be experiencing in our heart, that just like you were saying, that you never got a chance to grieve for the pets. And then one day it all came to you, right? You know, in your heart. So we have also been separated from Krishna for such a long time, and we have not really grieved for it. So when we start chanting, one of the things that may happen is that we'll actually start experiencing this sort of like, oh Krishna, I forgot you. I've turned my face. I've been separated from you for such a long time. And then that feeling of separation from Krishna will actually start to come. And we'll start feeling like, oh, I miss you, you know, where are you? So yeah, that is actually the original source of all our grief and all our sadness and everything else that we carry within. So thank you so much, Ashley. That was so beautiful.
Taranji, go ahead. You had raised your hand.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji. I just need to give a clarification on the term Vaishnava, because earlier we have learned that any devotees are Vaishnava, and today's explanation I think is slightly different. If you can just clarify on that.
Yeah, I think Prabhupada gives a broader definition of Vaishnava in that purport, but I guess essentially anybody who's a follower of God, a true follower of God, is a Vaishnava. Vaishnava means a follower of Vishnu. Vishnu means God. So a true follower in Christianity is also Vaishnava. A true follower in Islam is also Vaishnava. A true follower is also Vaishnava. It doesn't matter who you are. As long as you are following the laws of God, or dharma given by God, then you're a Vaishnava. So that's the bottom line definition of Vaishnava.
Irrespective of any religious belief or faith he is following. And
yeah, but at the same time, it can't be like self-concocted, because it has to have some foundation in the true scriptures of whatever tradition it is, and yeah.
So thank you so much, because we are running out of time. So we'll do that tomorrow. Yes, absolutely, Ashley. You know, and I think Delia is responding. It's perfectly right on. And Mataji will talk about this chanting more. I think we talked about how we can continue. This is, I think every time we should talk about this chanting process, because that's where we will find what we're looking for. So all of that we are studying is meant ultimately to bring us to that point where we can chant in rapt attention. That is the goal of all that we are trying to do.
Yeah, all the knowledge, all the service, all the thinking, everything ultimately will boil down to chanting.
And by the way, we're also thinking of starting a new batch, starting on the 10th of January. That will be only once a week on Sunday at 7 p.m. So we'll send the flyers out to all of you. And if you have anybody that you can, you know, who you think might also benefit, you've benefited, then we can.
So we'll do the Gita seminar that you guys already completed. We'll do that again.
And if you want to rejoin and do it all over, you know, you're also welcome. So that'll be Sunday 7. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you. I know.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.